All right. Hello, everyone. This is Found with Python DubsTech Coding Intro Workshop. And welcome to DubsTech. We are a UW RSO for diversified text fields, and we aim to bring the coolest tech to everyone. And about this coding intro workshop, I know that some of you have already know this already, but I'm just going to go over it again briefly. So you're here to learn how to code in Python, and you want to explain, your goal is to explore your interest in coding, and there will be new workshops, there will be new projects for every workshop, and all you need to do is to bring your laptop, and there will be no rushing, no homework, and no stress. And all workshop resources can be found at the link on the screen. So how this workshop works. First, I'm going to show you how the finalized product works, and then I'm going to talk about the general aspects behind it. What areas of code, what aspects of code you're going to use and learn, and then I'm going to walk you through the coding, and that's it. Everyone will get their projects completed, and we'll appreciate it. We'll appreciate it enormously if you can show your projects to your friends, and that will help us grow. All right, if you are new to this workshop and if you're missing a session, then the past PowerPoints and the completed workshop projects, and of course this video series will be available online. And you are welcome to come to our coding sessions that will be helping you in person, or you can reach to me via email. So I'm gonna skip the workshop one review for now, because you can always refer to the first workshop one video. And that will be more helpful. So this workshop, we're going to do Magic 3. It is our simplified version of Magic 8, but then we limit the responses to yes, no, and maybe. And so let's run it right now. Click on the run button. Enter the number of questions you have, 3. What is your yes, no question? Is it gonna rain tomorrow in Seattle? Yes, Seattle is always raining. What is your yes no question again? Is Python fun? Maybe. We'll see about that. What's the third question? Do you like Java? No. Okay, Python hates Java. That's interesting. No. And so you've seen the program in action. I want you to think for a moment about what the program actually needs to do. Like how does it ask and then echo the question. As you can see right now on the console, it echoes the question, right? And how does it make a random response each time? So every time it might say yes or maybe or no. Those come out randomly. I do not set the pattern. It's random, like what we did last time with the dice rolling simulator. And how does it keep repeat asking over and over, but only over a set time? And that is the time we have passed to the console at the very beginning. You can pause the video now, and I'll explain it in a moment. So here we go. So the echoing the question and asking the question, and of course inputting the number, that comes down to input output IO, and that is generic function. So we only need to use the lines of code. We don't have to implement that feature. And if else, also generic. So think about it as we can use if else in checking if the number is correct. We can actually accept that as a new round of games being played. And also we need if else in taking care of the random responses. And when speaking of generating random responses, that will be our original method. But then the act of generating random numbers, and then being with a number, then you generate random response. So it's original work, but then you are using generic functions to do implement that. All right, that is kind of like a loop right there. And there will also be restricted while loop. So while loop is generic, but then we're gonna have our own original restrictions, like how we set up, how we're gonna use it, and how we decrement the running times over and over. Well, it's up to us to decide. So let's get started. I want you to name your new program Metastory.python and work on a method called getResponse. And that's very similar to row in workshop 1. But this time I want you to generate the random numbers to be within the range of 1 to 3. And here we go. So I don't need that. And let's save this file in our workspace, magic3. All right, you have that. And to declare, first we need to import a random class at the beginning of the code. So let's import random. Let's write our getResponse method. And we want to return random.rand int 1,3. And that's it. And now I want you to work on our main method. So think about what it does, all right? So before the loop, we want the user to input a number, a proper number, and we want to store that information in a variable called playtimes. And the user input is of the type string, and string is one of the primitive data types that Python provides. And so there's a trouble now. We want to process the user input as an integer, so as a number, but Python won't just subtract a number out of a string. That's intuitive. So how can you check that if user input is a proper integer, but is stored right now as a string? And if it is indeed, then how would you convert a string user input back into the integer? And what should you do if the user input is not an integer, or if it's something too big to be practical? You can pause now and think about it, and we will continue. So let's first talk about some Python data types. We have string right here. So string, that's the name of the variable, is equal to, and quotation marks, ABC. So ABC is the value of the string. And 1, 2, 3, that is an integer. So there's no float points, there's no decimal places anywhere. It's just an integer. And since we use input as a part of our input-output design, but input returns a string from the user console, so we need to convert the string back to the integer to make it work. And we'll introduce you to more data types in the future workshops. So let's think about the action of converting the integers from strings. So if user input is numeric and converted user input is less than 100, then, and only then, if both conditions match, we will set the playtimes to be user input. And else, if one of them or both of them fails, then we want to print out the error message and use a default value. So you can see the brackets here, and they are just normal language. So they are called pseudocodes. So they are fake codes, but then they represent the thinking, the planning action that we do before we actually go down to the actual coding. And the number 100 here is just a random number chosen to be the upper limit for like a proper playtimes, sorry. So remember, we checked if the user input is numeric first, and then worry about converting it, and actually check if it's within 100. So if the user input is not numeric, Python just will stop there and end the if statement check and do whatever that's in the else. So that is called short circuit execution. It checks the first thing in the if commands So we connected them with and Python goes from left to right. And converting strings into integers, that feels like some generic functions, but heck, I don't know what it is. What do we do? Well, we Google them. So I recommend you to go to Stack Overflow and try keywords like Python convert string to int. That will do the job. That is how I found this method online. So the actual code you're going to use is if user input dot is digit and int, so that converts the user input into an integer, is less than 100. So that is the code right there. I want you to remember this and use it later. So if both conditions are evaluated to be true, and when you actually convert user input to play times, just don't forget to cast user input to integer. And you can do that and save it in default values.py. But for now, I'm just going to code in Magic 3. It's up to you. So now we are in our Magic 3 and continue working on the main method. Let's first create user input and we're going to accept a user input from the console. So enter the number of questions you have. And we're gonna set a play times. And I want it to be equal to 3. That's the default value. And I will talk about that practice later. And if the user input dot is digit and int user input is less than 100, play times, and don't forget to cast user input back to the integer. That's what we want it to be. Else, and we'll just print bad input. You will play, and let's give it a play times as default. And that's it. So let's write the shortcut right here. See that in action. Enter the number of questions you have. Let's try deliberately messing it up. Bad input, you will play 3 times as default. So that seems okay. We have the 3 right here and the play times right here. So it just calls play times and returns a 3. So you will play 3 times as default. That is what we want, practice with default values and processing bad inputs. So the number 3 keeps popping up. And because we've decided that this is 3, and that is 3. So number 3 is both the number of responses and also the default number of play times. Is there a way to have 3 directly in the codes and will avoid possible mistakes? Because the more numbers you have, the either you will lose track of everything, and that is not practical. So right now, we're gonna do a bit with global variables. So you want to declare this global variable at the beginning of the program. Let's call it num of responses. And it's best to capitalize all the letters to tell Python, not only Python, but also to other programmers who want to read your work, that this is a global variable. So the global variable are accessible to all the methods, and so they avoid duplicates. And you don't have to code this in global variable. The py will just continue our work in Magic 3. So right here. Let's give it a shot. Num of So the recording was interrupted and edit this out.
Screenshot on?
Mm-hmm. So num of responses is equal to 3. And we'll change the number 3 right here to be num of responses. So is this one. And it's okay that we leave this as what it is right now because that will be just equal to number of responses. So let's run this again. Give it a 3 and bad input. You'll play 3 times as default. So far, so good. So that's it for the getting the user input. And what we're gonna do next is to work on the while loop. And what I showed you in the first workshop, the loop dice .py, the while loop is not going to end until the user types in the queue, so as of quit. And so think about what would happen if the user rolls the dice forever, then the computer would probably crash. So infinite loops are bad. It consumes a lot of CPU time and memory, and they can crash your system. So it's a great idea to restrict how many times that your loop actually runs. So to write a restricted while loop, you want to declare a Boolean variable or to set up a restricted condition at the beginning of the while loop. And while this kind of variable or condition is true, do something. And inside the while loop, I want you to write if statements to set the variable to be false and end the loop, or to work to alter the condition. So at some point, it no longer satisfies loop condition, and so the while loop stops. So let's check out the general outline of what we're gonna do in a short time. While playtime is greater than 0, so when user can still play the game, we want to get the input from the user, we want to echo the question, and then we're going to call get response, and we want to print the responses accordingly. And play times will be equal to itself subtract 1. So that line right here will subtract play times by 1. And then at the very end, we want to print thanks for playing. It's just a thank you message. So we have 3 responses, yes, no, or maybe. And how could you print different things based on different get response values? We're going to use a more complex if-else statement this time. So instead of last time, we only have to care about the if statement and not worrying about anything else. This time, we actually have to care about at least 2 statements. So at least we want to check if the get response returns a yes or no. All right. And oops, that's not what I wanted to show you right now. So let's work on the magic 3. Continue working. So as we've discussed, we start out with while play times is greater than 0, and we want to get input from the question. So let's declare a new string called question, and it's gonna be accepting the question from the user input. What is your yes, no question? All right. And we also want to echo the question. So we want to print this out. So your question is, and then separate the multiple strings with a comma. Let's type question. And let's get our responses and store it somewhere. So response is equal to get response. So that saves us some letters. We don't have to type get response every time. So, and also every time you call get response, it will generate probably a new number. So it is the best practice to do it is to declare and store it right now, so we don't ended up calling the get response for multiple amount of times. So if response is equal to 1, print, want to print yes. Else if is elif in Python. Response is equal to 2. Want to print no. And else, at this point, we do know that response is 3, because that's the all the possible, because that's all the possibilities of responses. It can only range from 1 to 3. At this point, we want to print maybe. And don't forget that at the end of the while loop, we want to alter the play times. We want to decrement it by 1. So that simulates that you have 1 less time right there to play this game. All right. And that is one way of doing it. Another way is a little time saver. You could actually say play times minus equals 1. So that is the same thing as this line of code right here. And at the end, we can write a little thank you message. Thank you for playing. All right. And we have the shortcut right here. So let's take a look at the code. We accepted the, we take the input from the user shell and we store it at the user input. We initialize playtimes right here so that it does not interfere with it. So if you want to declare a user input playtimes right here, then the while loop will not have access to it. So we actually want to declare playtimes right here. And then we check the user input, whether it's numeric and it's acceptable within 100. Then we cast user input to integer and we override playtimes. And else, then we're not going to do anything to playtimes. It will still be 3, and it warns user about a bad input. And then we enter the while loop. So this when this playtimes is greater than 0, so you still have some times to play the game. Then we're gonna accept the user input. Again, it's gonna be a yes/no question. Then it echoes the question, and we get the random number from calling the get response. And if the response is 1, we print yes. Remember last time we said that use double equals, very important, double equals, to check if these two are the same. If these two are indeed the same, then we print yes. If they're not the same, we print no. And else, if none of those statements are evaluated to be true, then we know that response is 3, so we print maybe. And then we decrement playtimes by 1. And at the very end, we want to print thank you for playing, like a thank you message. So let's try that. We're gonna only do one question for now. What is your yes/no question? Do you like Python? No. Oh, Python hits himself. So that's interesting. Thank you for playing. All right. So far so good. So congrats on finishing another projects with us. And I would like you to think about some questions for now before we end this workshop. So what if we have like 100 responses to deal with? It will be so tedious to write 100 if-else statements in a row, and it looks bad, and you are more likely to make mistakes. And so it's a better practice for us to store all the responses into a linear structure, and that will be referenced as the array behavior of the Python list, and that will be introduced in future workshops. So that's all there is to it. I will see you in workshop 3, where we do more practice on what we've learned and make our guess a number game. Thank you very much for paying attention.